raise a hallelujah. Oh, fear, you lost your hold on me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. Sing a little louder. 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 Oh, sing a little louder. Sing a little louder. In the presence of my enemies. Sing a little louder. Louder than the unbelief. Sing a little louder. My weapon is the melody. Sing a little louder. Heaven comes to fight for me. Sing a little louder. In the presence of my enemies. Sing a little louder. Oh, louder than the unbelief. Sing a little louder. My weapon is the melody. Sing a little louder. Heaven comes to fight for me. Sing a little louder. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I'll raise a hallelujah. In the presence of my enemies. I'll raise a hallelujah. Louder than the unbelief. I'll raise a hallelujah. My weapon is the melody. I'll raise a hallelujah. Heaven comes to fight for me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive.
Hey everybody, hope you all are well. I was watching this interview this week with Cornel West and Anderson Cooper on CNN, and it was following one of the memorial services for George Floyd. And Anderson kind of asked Cornel, like, what did he observe? What did he see? And Cornel goes on like eloquently about this righteous response that he saw in George Floyd's family and friends at that service, and how their response of praise and worship and all these things speaks to a history of Black people, and that being our response, and that how there were plenty of opportunities to be violent and to form a black version of the Ku Klux Klan. But those opportunities weren't taken. And if that was taken, that there would have been a civil war literally every single generation. And in the middle of the interview, Anderson breaks down in tears. And Cornell's response to Anderson's tears is very striking, at least it was to me. And maybe it'll be to you. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but this is what he says. He says, "We cry because we care, because we are concerned. We are not numb on the inside. We don't have a chilliness of soul and a coldness of mind and heart. We cry because we connect. But then we must have a vision that includes all of us and a true analysis of power that's honest, up top in the systems of government, but also on Wall Street. Not only them, but in the mosques and temples and churches, and even in us." It says, can we hold on to integrity, honesty, and decency? He goes on to speak specifically to Anderson's tears, and he says, Socrates never cries, but Jeremiah does, and Jesus does. And I was picking apart that statement a little bit, and I realized that, for Socrates, his attachment or his passion is attached to philosophic conclusions. But both Jeremiah and both Jesus were attached to people. They were attached to people. Not only were they attached to people, but their proximity to those people that were hurting, the proximity to the situation that was hurting, spoke to these things. And I think that speaks to our response. That our response probably is due to our attachments and also our proximity. And that will dictate whether we have a connection and whether we do care or whether we are numb to those certain situations. And I want to make sure that in our responses to those things, that we don't fall into the trap that the Pharisees did in Matthew chapter 23, verse 23 and 24. I'm going to read it from the Amplified Version. He says, "Woe to you, self-righteous scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you give a tenth of tithe of your mint and dill and cumin, focusing on minor matters, and have neglected the weightier, more important moral and spiritual provisions of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. But these are the primary things that you ought to have done without neglecting the others. You spiritually blind gods who strain out a gnat, consuming yourselves with minuscule matters, and swallow a camel, ignoring and violating God's precepts." And so we need to be cautious in our responses, that we are putting weight on the things that God puts weight on, and that we aren't putting weight on or too much weight into minuscule matters that in the grand scheme of things don't affect people on the same level as justice and mercy and faithfulness. And so I want to leave us with a few questions that you can answer for yourself. One is, when injustice happens, what is your response? And why? Why is that your response? How long does it take for injustice in your heart and mind to kind of fade away and you move on to the next thing? And then two, are you tied more to traditions of man, or maybe even God, than you are the commands of God? When you hear those passages, what is your attachment to those passages? What is your detachment from those passages? Who are you in those narratives? Who are you in those stories? Are you on the right side, or are you putting yourself in the Pharisees' shoes? Are we analyzing ourselves correctly? And then three, what is your attachment and proximity to people who may not think like you, look like you, worship like you, believe what you believe? I think that the answer to those three questions will speak to a lot of where our hearts are in the matters of justice, in the matters of mercy, and in the matters of faithfulness. So I pray that this message finds you well, that it speaks to your heart and encourages you, but challenges you as well. As always, praying for you. Love you all. See you later.